Okay, we have the first episode of season 2 of Peacemaker officially out, and I am actually surprised at how much I miss these guys. I was really genuinely shocked with how much I ended up being really emotionally invested in the first season of Peacemaker and this character in general. I obviously am a fan of James Gunn, and I was looking forward to it coming off the heels of the Suicide Squad, but I didn't really have an attachment to this character, and the first season really kind of blew me away. And I also think that this is such an interesting project because the first season technically came out when we were still in the DCEU, and we were still trying to incorporate these like hodgepodge characters from all over the place from movies like Aquaman and whatever. And now season 2 is premiering in a post-Superman, like post-official reboot DCU era. And I think that it's smart that they're kind of addressing this head on, and they're like, the story seems to have some kind of meta narrative that is addressing the cognitive dissonance here. I'm going to get into some spoilers about episode 2, season 1. So if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want to know, scroll away now. Okay, we've got that out of the way. So yeah, I mean, first of all, changing the ending officially of like, of the ending of season 1. Obviously the Justice League shows up at the end of season 1, but now, we've retroactively introduced the Justice Gang into this, narrative, and Guy Gardner and Hawkgirl are supposed to have shown up at the end of Peacemaker season 1. They also appear in this episode along with Maxwell Lord, so they are fully in the Superman universe at this point, as well as Peacemaker obviously making an appearance in the Superman movie. Now, the other big thing is that Peacemaker found some kind of vortex that allows him to access an alternate universe and like find an alternate universe version of himself. This I think is really interesting because, again, the fact that this season is taking place technically in like a different universe, it's like technically, I mean, like obviously for the characters, it's exactly the same, or it seems to be. But the audience knows that things have changed. And I think it's very interesting that the narrative is engaging with that in a way that I feel like the audience is going to be ready for and like ready to enjoy because of how weird like DC movies have been forever. I think it's funny and interesting to incorporate that element. Another thing I really like about this show is that in a world where we have this like extremely over the top, like cynical satire of the boys and this like incredibly almost like saccharine, sappy earnestness of the MCU, this is it feels very grounded. It feels very tapped into the actual human element of these stories. And I've always thought that superhero stories are at their best when they're using these fantastical elements to get to the core of like human issues. And I'm not saying that's not possible with shows like the boys in MCU. I've loved a lot of the movies and material that's come out of those things. I just think that this is willing to engage with that in a more grounded way, which isn't better or worse, but it is something that I think it confronts like the fact that there is inherent violence here that is sometimes going to result in unavoidable casualties, and like the guilt that he feels, the pressure that he feels to be this icon, this emblematic figure of goodness and like being a savior is kind of impossible. It's kind of an impossible job. It's like not really something that you could actually do in the real world. And I feel like this show really confronts like the expectation versus reality of life. And they do it through this like exaggerated superhero story, which I think is just really interesting and something that not a lot of other stories have done. But I'm honestly just really excited to see where the story goes as well. I think that this is such an interestingly told story. It's such a cast of interesting characters. I'm thrilled to see Freddie Stroma and Daniel Brooks back. I'm really curious to see what happens with Harcourt's character. I think that she's such an interesting archetype, and I love the way that they've confronted like the idea of toxic masculinity being an ideology that can be ingrained in women. And I mean, like, they're not wrong. It's a fascinating character study. But the cast is definitely bigger. They've introduced a lot of new characters into the ensemble that it seems are going to have more crossover appeal for the films. So I'm curious how that's handled. But honestly, I have very high hopes. I'm very optimistic and can't wait to see the rest of this season because the show has been just such a breath of fresh air. It's so unique and interesting. And I can't wait to see more, honestly.